All right. So Senator Hertzberg, welcome, and thank you so much for being here. And let's see, we'll just give a few more moments for people to clear, and then we'll go ahead and have you begin your testimony. Okay. All right.
Can't wait.
All right. I think we're good. All right. Okay. So welcome, Senator Hertzberg, and thank you for being here. And so we're taking up item number 4, SB 1203. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm seeking by this measure to correct a loophole, a flaw in the law. It's hard to imagine that such a thing could exist, but from time to time they're discovered. And this flaw relates to the jurisdiction of this committee, the Pension Reform Act, which provides in most instances that employees have a classic PERS formula and can keep it, and that those can move between that those who move between public employers, must be offered these benefits under their with the new agency. But with respect to joint power authorities formed after the pension reform took effect, there are their new employers, therefore the JPAs never had the classic PERS benefits to offer. So this creates certain unfairness with respect to employees moving from a current job, government job, to another government job that just happens to be organized as a joint powers authority, like they're doing in Orange County, Senator Morlock, of which I'm keenly aware. Those employers are doing the same work for the JPA. Certainly this is a stumbling block, and we're seeking to remedy this really a mistake in my judgment. Certainly someone couldn't have predicted the future in terms of how this was drafted. So that's the measure. That's what we're trying to fix. And Christy Boma is here as my star witness.
Hey, thank you. Witness and support.
Hi, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Christy Bauma on behalf of the California Professional Firefighters. Pleased to be co-sponsor of this measure. I mean, I can give you example after example where local governments and the locals I represent have approached us and said, hey, I work for the city of Tracy today, but the city of Tracy wants to form a joint powers authority with Stanislaus Consolidated Fire Protection District. And if I continue to work for my agency who will be jointly exercising their power with this other district, I'll lose my opportunity to maintain my classic status. Or in Upland Montclair, they're talking about it. But here's the piece that's important. They're not going to go forward and achieve the economies of scale that they will get by combining their efforts to provide these services if they can't protect their workers. They have been very clear about that. That's why this committee heard Senator Huff's bill a couple times. He had to make an adjustment after the fact, and it was approved unanimously because both labor and management wanted to proceed with this consolidation and improve services for their community, so we urge your support.
Mr. President, I'll move, Mr. Chair, I'll move the bill.
Okay, so before we accept the motion, any other witnesses support? Any witnesses opposition? Seeing none. Questions from committee members? Actually, one thing just to clarify, I believe there is an author amendment being offered.
As amended, sir.
As amended, so that's changing shall to may in section 752205, which basically makes it optional for the employees of the Joint Powers Authority instead of requiring the employees.
Correct.
So, all right. So I just want to be sure everyone's aware of that. Okay. Any questions from members? Seeing none, recommending an aye vote. Is there a motion on the bill? Yes, from Senator Hall. There, we'll take that motion.
Yeah, I'll move the bill. Thank
the
you.
motion's been it's been moved. Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is do pass as amended and re-refer to Appropriations Committee. Pan?
Aye.
Pan, aye. Morrell? Bell?
Aye.
Bell, aye. Hall?
Aye.
Hall, aye. Morlock?
So right now it is 3-0. We'll hold the roll open. And thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, committee members. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, Senator Nielsen, welcome. So we'll be taking up item number 2, SB 950.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Members, for a number of years I headed the Board of Prison Terms, and I got to deal with those unrepresented folks in government. And this is what an area we're trying to address. It creates what's called the Excluded Employee Arbitration Act. I'm not famous for titling bills, but I guess that's instructive as to what it would do. It would improve a grievance process for these employees. Although I guess would say there is one now, there's not much of an incentive, and there are very few settlements that occur through it. It authorizes the excluded employees to request binding arbitration if these two of these following conditions occur. The excluded employee has filed a Title II grievance with Cal HR. The grievance has not been resolved satisfactorily at 4 levels of review currently in place. It defines arbitration as a binding ruling that resolves an excluded employee grievance at the 5th level of the grievance process. Outlines a process where Cal HR has the employee organization agree on one arbitrator and requires the arbitrator to issue a legally binding decision within 45 days of the arbitration, and orders the non-prevailing party to pay the cost. That's I think, a key provision in the bill. The current system, as I've noted, would I say proven to be less than effective. Almost all grievances are routinely denied, and the only recourse then for the employee is to go to the Superior Court or the State Personnel Board, or they or their organization. That's costly for the state and the employee organization. They often take years to resolve, if they get resolved at all. And again, it utilizes a loser pay model. I have with me Mr. John Lovell to provide testimony today, and Ted Toppin, California State Supervisors. If we may proceed with our testimony.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Witness support.
I'm Ford Canet. I'll make it short. I know it's been a long day for you. I represent the California Correctional Supervisors Organization. We also represent peace officers in the Department of State Hospitals. I've been overseeing grievances for excluded employees for approximately 13 years, and I have yet to see a granted grievance come out of Cal HR. And as you know, working in state government, what can go wrong will go wrong. And there are a lot of justifiable grievances that are being denied, basically because they can. There's no consequence to a state agency or Cal HR to just go ahead and deny all the grievances generated by state supervisors. There's no, the only recourse the employee organization has is to litigate. And it takes years sometimes. Right? We got a case right now, 7 years we've been litigating it. And it was a grievable issue. This bill would make our grievance system work again, because Cal HR or the state agency would be more objective and more fair in reviewing the grievance when they realize that they could end up in arbitration and lose their pays. Now, we put the loser pay clause in there because we didn't want, and you as a state legislator wouldn't want a bunch of frivolous arbitrations. So if an employee organization decides to go on arbitration, they risk having to pay the whole cost. So it will be a rarely used thing, but it will be an incentive for the state agencies and Cal HR to be more objective and fair. And I urge your aye vote.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, John Lovell. I'm here on behalf of a number of rank and file organizations: Association for Los Angeles Deputy Sheriffs, LA Police Protective League, Riverside Sheriff's Association, LA County Professional Peace Officers. These groups recognize that it is important to have a cognizable grievance procedure for the excluded employees for 2 reasons. First of all, it is a more rational system. Secondly, you then do not create disincentives for people to promote. We support this bill. We commend the author for bringing it forward.
Thank you.
Chairman Pant and members, Ted Toppin for the Association of California State Supervisors, strongly in support. We thank Senator Nielsen for introducing this bill. The grievance procedure for supervisors is broken. Arbitration would be a huge improvement. It would save the state money, and it would save organizations time and money as well. Strongly in support.
Thank you. Next witness. He's just coming up. Hey, come to the table here.
Hal Dassinger, Civil Justice Association of California. We support the bill.
Thank you. All right, any other witnesses support? Witnesses in opposition? Seeing none. Questions from committee members? Seeing none. Well, thank you so much for bringing this bill forward, and would recommend an aye vote. Is there a motion? There's a motion. Secretary, please call the roll.
Motion is do pass and re-refer to Judiciary Committee. Pan.
Aye.
Pan, aye. Morel. Bell.
Aye.
Bell, aye. Hall. Morlock. Morlock, aye.
Excellent. So that's currently 3-0, and the bill is on call.
Thank you, Mr.
so much.
Chairman, members.
And before we move on to the next bill, perhaps we'll just go ahead and take up the consent calendar. So we have on the consent calendar, items number 8, 9, and 10, 8 SB 1162 by Berry Hill, Public Employees Retirement, Mammoth Lakes Fire District, SB 1352, that's a committee bill, Committee on Public Employment Retirement, State Teachers Retirement, Cleanup Bill, and ACR 98 by Assemblymember Beth Gaines, State Employee Merit Awards. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? It's moved. All right. Secretary, please call the roll.
Pan.
Aye.
Pan, aye. Morel. Bell.
Aye.
Bell, aye. Hall. Morlock. Morlock, aye.
Thank you. Okay, next item will be item number 5, SB 1251. Senator Morlock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So if you want to.
Unless you want to break it up, you do two, I do one, you do two.
No, you're good. I do all mine at the end. So
Okay.
Chair always comes last. Unless there's no one here while waiting. Senator Morlock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, colleagues. And thank you. This is my second meeting with this committee, so thanks for letting me participate. Over the last half dozen years, I've been analyzing comprehensive annual financial reports, CAFRs of cities, counties, and states. Sort of started back when I was going to be the chair of the County Board of Supervisors again in 2012. And we were able to get the CAFRs for all of the 34 cities in Orange County and just kind of did a simple computation, just took their unrestricted net deficit and divided it by the population to kind of see what the matrix was. Where should you land? Where should you be? And so that kind of gravitated to doing it for counties and where did Orange County stand? And we ended up being in 46th place because a $1.7 billion bankruptcy can really wipe out your bottom line. And for a county that's always accused of being such a wealthy place, we really are having some difficult times. And then I did it for states and found that out of the 50 states, California was in 46th place using this metric throughout the nation. So a study came out shortly after I did my little simple metric, and the Mercatus Center at George Mason University came out with the same statistic that we as a state were in 46th place. So I have good news. Since my election, we've moved up to 44th place. I'd like to take the credit, but it's really the fact that because GASB is requiring that you have to report your pension liabilities on the balance sheet, Kentucky and Hawaii have moved into those slots and moved us up two spots. So we just received our CAFR just in the last few weeks from the having it audited, and our unrestricted net deficit for the state of California for governmental activities is now $170 billion, and if you throw in the business-related activities, it goes up to $175 billion. That's a deficit. So our state is not in a pretty picture. The state controller on her website has the CAFRs going back to, I think, 1999. You can kind of see the progression of where we have gone. We were positive back when Wilson was governor, and we are now sorely in this major deficit. So I just think it's important that our taxpayers are notified and get some transparency of what is our unrestricted net deficit, what are our unfunded pension liabilities. What is the unrestricted, excuse me, the unfunded actuarial accrued liability for our retiree medical, which is now $74 billion. And we're concerned about claims of deferred maintenance for roads and schools. And so we should inform our stakeholders of what that deferred maintenance liability is as well. We need to show them in the voter pamphlet where the state is, and every 2-year cycle, we should be showing them how the finances are progressing. Every 2 years, the numbers should show a decline in the pension plan unfunded liability. Hopefully, every 2 years, it should show a decline in the retiree medical. Every 2 years, let's hope it shows a decline in the deferred maintenance for our infrastructure deficit. Every 2 years, it should show a decline in outstanding bond debt. And it should show a decline in the unrestricted net deficit as we're going back to trying to reach zero. I believe we owe this to our taxpayers. We owe it to our pensioners and employees. This data is available, but it would provide a dashboard of key indicators. Today I'm in the LA Times because I am a pensioner. I am 60 years old and retired and worked for 20 years at the County of Orange. So I do get a pension. So this is a hobby in my retirement, being a senator. I kind of told a reporter that today, that I had that ability. So I sort of take umbrage with people that think I'm anti-pension. I'm not anti-defined pension. I do get a little riled as a CPA and CFP when defined benefit pension plans are abused. And so that's where I've had my frustrations and public comments on retroactivity and increasing those pension formulas in the middle of the game. But now that I'm at the state, I have a duty to make sure that our retirees get their pension benefits for the duration of their lives. If we do not keep our eyes on the ball, we may fail them. We may become the next Detroit, a municipality that reduced pension benefits as a remedy to exit Chapter 9 bankruptcy court. Executives know that if we can not measure it, then we cannot manage it. And so we have to assure the taxpayers that we are measuring it, we are managing it, and we're being very transparent about it as we journey on this long-term adventure in an honest, and I think it's the honest thing to do. Governor Brown and I agree on this agenda. He made it clear in his 2016 State of the State. When he talked about pension benefits, he mentioned that the liabilities were $220 billion. He mentioned that we have taken steps to reduce future costs since 2012, but we have more work to do. He acknowledged the retiree medical benefit, and he said, these liabilities are so massive that it is tempting to ignore them. We can't possibly pay them off in a year or two or even 10. And there is little satisfaction in the notion of chipping away at an obligation for 3 decades to pay for something that has already been promised. Yet it is our moral obligation to do so, particularly before we make new commitments. We have promised our workers these benefits in exchange for careers spent serving the public. If we fail to acknowledge and pay for these obligations, we will unfairly burden future generations of Californians with these debts. So, colleagues, let's acknowledge these obligations. Let's inform our stakeholders, and I urge and I vote on SB 1251.
Thank you. Witnesses in support? Okay. Witnesses in opposition? Let's come up.
Mr. Chairman, Senators, Terry Brennan on behalf of the Service Employees International Union. There were 3 things that the good senator from Orange County said that we agree with: transparency, measuring, and managing all the risks and liability and expenditures of the state government. The problem with this proposal is it only uses one tool that's already out there and available, and takes it out of context and places it on every ballot measure. There are certainly instances where bond debt would be important, unexpended bond debt, projects that need to be done would make a lot of sense to be on a ballot bond measure. The retirement debt and healthcare liabilities have very little relevance in context of some other measures that may or may not be on the ballot. They're also already available from the Controller's Office, every time the LAO does an analysis on a pension measure or something, they include that relevant information in the ballot pamphlet and the discussion. Taking it out of context and placing it at the front does more harm than good, and I think creates more confusion than adding information. We've long been advocates of a pie chart. Where do the expenditures go? What are we doing with the revenues? I mean, one of the biggest problems with the voting public is they don't know what government does. And giving them a demonstration of where every expenditure is, including tax expenditures, the loopholes, the giveaways, the $15 billion a year right now, we are not collecting because we've given away those tax incentives, expenditures since 2001. So for that reason, we're opposed to including it in the ballot pamphlet. Thank you very much.
Next witness.
Mr. Chairman and members, Jai Sukrasad with the California School Employees Association. We are also in opposition to this bill. I think your committee analysis pointed out an important point that, without the context, how do voters make sense of this information? I don't want to reiterate all that's been stated by my colleague, Mr. Terry Brennan, about the nexus of it to these measures. They don't always deal with bond indebtedness. They don't always deal with those kinds of issues. And finally, I would just add that, in the independence of the LAO, I think is well guarded by many. And here we are using the LAO as a way to highlight something that maybe one or two or a few individuals are interested in. Why just these points? Why not what's been pointed out, tax credits, all these other points that's available, the fact that we are now paying less than we used to, and, since the 80s for pension liability issues. Those kinds of things are not being brought up, but only specific data are being asked here. For all those reasons, we ask for you to oppose this bill. Thank you.
Next witness.
Chairman Pan, members Ted Toppin for the Professional Engineers in California Government in opposition. I won't be too repetitive, but I will say that this information is already on the website. The CAFR report has 30 pages on state pension and in retiree health care liability. It exists. It's available for everybody right this minute. The second piece I would focus on is Peg's concern that this is just another potential impediment to voter participation. 30, 40 pages of financial data on the state's financial liabilities is another hurdle for voters to make their way through a voter pamphlet. It doesn't help participation. That ballot pamphlet is long enough as it is and doesn't help. This is not a productive thing to provide voters. They should be learning what's on the ballot and studying those issues. Thanks.
Thank you.
Chairman Randy Cheek with SEIU Local 1000. We're in concurrence with all our brothers here at the table that there is an issue of confusion. As Ted mentioned, you may have a ballot pamphlet this year of 300 pages. Just adding more and more to this just confuses the voter and confuses citizens, and we're in opposition.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Christy Baum on behalf of the California Professional Firefighters, for the reasons previously stated, we're in opposition.
All right. Any other witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, questions from committee members? Yes, Senator Bell.
Yeah, when the law changed to put the legislature in term limits, part of it was a restructuring of the legislative budget, which some people claim created a devastation and reduction in the staff. We had a limit on the staff that really reduced the legislative analyst office. For example, I think it used to be like 40 to 50% higher than it is today. I don't know if that's true. I think, but it's something like that. Some of the old hands around here know the answer to that question. But the question I have for you is, requiring the office of the legislative analyst and looking at the office as it stands now, do you think they're really able and better able to do this information rather than the state controller, who produces the CAFR itself and is able to present a much more functional understanding of the liabilities and assets of the state? So that'd be the question. The legislative analyst, I think, I've been here, 9 years? And I noticed that they're really stretched thin. And a lot of their reports, I say, well, why, they could have done a little more on this, especially when you talk about determining what the unfunded infrastructure needs are. And that's an area I have a little bit of experience on too. And I feel that there is just sort of a need, I think, from some aspect to have a little more in-depth ability to produce information. So I just wanted to hear what you had to say about that, because I think the Legislative Analyst's Office has been sliced up pretty good over the last, what has it been, 20 years since we passed the term limit law? Because that law required the cutting of the budget also for the legislative staff.
Thank you, Senator
So I just want to
Bell.
know if you've looked at that or considered that issue.
You know, we're only talking about 7 numbers, and
Yeah.
so it's hopefully not going to be a very time-consuming,
But to
staff-consuming.
come up with unfunded infrastructure needs, that's quite a process to do that.
Yeah, but it's already public. We've been talking about a $59 billion infrastructure need. So that number's already been out there. So I would suspect that it should either be growing or declining if we're attacking it, right? So I would think that the legislative analyst should be fine, but the controller obviously has a lot of the numbers as well because they come directly from the CAFR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, I just want to say anything that, I just think the legislative analyst, I would say, if I had to do things, I would have a much stronger program to get the information, because I don't really think right now they're where I would want them to be in terms of analyzing bills, analyzing fiscal impacts, all those kinds of things. I just don't think they're there. Okay, I think we need to kind of look at this and maybe look at fixing this for ourselves, the legislature, both houses, the Assembly and the Senate, because I don't think we're getting enough that we need to make good decisions. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and I think you make a great point, because certainly it's your burden, and I think we should inform the taxpayers that we've got lots to do.
Senator Morrell.
Yes. Thank you, Senator Morlock, for this bill. I appreciate it because I love full disclosure. I used to have 2 companies, a real estate company and then a lending company. And I mean, yeah, full disclosure, and more full disclosure. As soon as you gave a person an application, you had to give them truth in lending and what it was going to cost them. Then they signed loan docs. They got a 3-day rescission. If you were off $100, you had to redraw the loan doc. So I think when this is even a higher priority when we come to the taxpayers' money, and I thank you that you're remembering that it's the taxpayers' money and not our money. So I like this, and I'd like to move the bill too.
Okay, we'll take that motion at the appropriate time, but thank you. Okay, any other questions? So we made reference to the CAFR, and I appreciate, Senator Morlock, that you're interested in transparency, and I heard Senator Morrell talk about the importance of, being sure we have full disclosure. So in my mind, then, truly the full disclosure is not merely putting a set of single numbers, but actually the explanation behind them, right? I mean, otherwise they're out of context. Imagine if we simply said, well, for every candidate, we're going to put what they receive from public pensions right next to their names. I mean, that's not fair, right? It's not about disclosure. That's more, that's an opportunity for mischief. So this is actually the CAFR. We had it printed out. I believe it is publicly available. It's on a website, right? There's a link. You can get to it. It's accessible to everyone in the public who wishes to receive it. So from what I understand, although you cite those numbers, really are we talking, I mean, we're talking about putting this in every ballot pamphlet, right? Of course, this is also, since we're talking about pensions, this is the CalPERS report. Being full disclosure, this is the comprehensive So I presume we're not talking about putting this in the ballot measure, but if we really wanted to be,
If you
we want to
had,
be fully disclosure, we at least have to put this, right?
if you had the real CAFR,
Right.
it's an inch and a half thick, 2
Right.
pages.
Yeah, I
both
tried
sides.
to, I'm actually trying to help you here,
Yeah.
but still.
So no, we're not, we're saying what we can do is is 1 page.
But
We're not
is that
talking
a
30
full,
pages, we're talking
but
1
that's not
page.
full disclosure then, because there's no context or no explanation, right?
Unless you give links to the CAFRs for both PERS and the state.
So in other words, what we should do is, I mean, I'd have less objection if we merely had, well, it is available to the public, but if you want to put the website and say you can link to the full report on the ballot measure. But again, I think there's also, and admittedly, this is not, I think it's the next committee that will have to deal with the ballot pamphlet itself, in the sense that I think our jurisdiction is more about, does it make sense to try to put all this information? But I think that, the question is that looking at a ballot pamphlet, given the amount of information that people need to get through just to be sure that they have the information they need to make decisions on whether it's candidates or initiatives, is already pretty thick. And then you have to say, well, now we're going to add additional information that if it was relevant to the initiative, it would be in there, right? I mean, it would be, that's part of that's why you have opposition, pro statements, opposition statements, you have an analysis that's done. We even have hearings on initiatives. We'll talk about initiatives and so forth. So that information's already there in regard to the different initiatives. And so to be sure people have that context and so forth. So if it happened to be about pensions, we would have a discussion about pensions in there. But this would be a sort of a standalone attached to the ballot measure. But if it's not particularly relevant to any of the particular measures, I'm not sure what people would do with that in relation to voting for candidates, since I guess they could, if they have a candidate statement, maybe. But so I was just trying to figure out how this is actually improving transparency from what we currently have now when it comes to really trying to have people understand what decisions they're making as a voter. So, I know we want to. So anyway, with that.
So I'm just waiting for a question mark.
Okay,
I
well, with that,
apologize,
actually, you know
Mr.
what?
Chair.
Maybe, so I guess at least at this point, I unfortunately do not feel like I'm in a position to support the bill and would have to oppose it at this point in time. But perhaps I'll give you an opportunity to close or answer the questions. So.
Great, well, thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair. It is just 1 page, it is just 7 numbers, and it would be on the web, which obviously would have the appropriate links right to the specific pages. We try to keep it real simple: net total revenues, total expenses, your unrestricted net deficit, or it should be net assets, but right now it's a deficit, and then categories of unfunded liabilities, and also the debt that's just linked from the CAFR. So it's a dashboard. It'll give the public every 2 years an ability to see how things are progressing. How are we doing as a legislature to manage this state? And what are we doing to get it out of 45th, 44th, 43rd place? What can we do, together, working diligently to make sure that we're moving the ball forward in the right direction. So, Mr. Chair, I don't think we're taking numbers out of context. I would disagree with the opponents. This simplifies an 1.5 inch thick document to some key numbers. And with that, I believe, would make voters more active and more participatory in the process if they knew the seriousness of some of the things that we're trying to address. So with that, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Okay, so there's been so there was a motion from Senator Morrell. So with that, Secretary, please call the roll.
Motion is due pass and re-refer to Governmental Organization Committee. Pan.
No.
Pan, no. Morrell?
Aye.
Morrell, aye. Bell?
No.
Bell, no. Hall? Morlock?
Aye.
Morlock, aye.
So we'll hold the roll open. It's right now 2-2. All right, Senator Morrell, would you like to take the gavel? I think I'm next.
you.